It didn't happen in Beijing. It happened in Kiev. Inside a government building, under dim lights, two hands shook over a document no one outside paid attention to. No parades, no breaking news, just a signature, 5 points, quietly agreed. Lithium, titanium, rare earths, exclusive rights, Western control. No room for China. Thousands of miles away in Baotou, the lights in one refining plant flickered for the last time. Production halted. No reason given. Workers were told to wait, but the trucks never returned, and the shipments never left. The world once depended on China's minerals. Now it's learning how to forget them. The question is no longer whether Beijing can stop the shift. It's whether anyone will tell them they've already been left behind. In April 2025, Ukraine signed a 5-point mineral pact with the United States. It didn't make headlines. There were no threats, no press conference, no drama, just a short handshake. And then the extraction rights were locked. Lithium fields, titanium zones, rare earth clusters, mapped, certified, transferred, all placed under exclusive Western control for the next 20 years. The words China or Beijing were never mentioned, but inside the Ministry of Industry in Beijing, the reaction was immediate. Emergency meetings, supply chain reviews, a quiet directive, halt rare earth shipments through Eastern Europe until further notice. But nothing could be undone, because it wasn't just about Ukraine. It was about a pattern. One by one, countries China once overlooked began to disappear from its orbit. Namibia, Brazil, Australia, and now Ukraine on the doorstep of Europe with deposits no longer accessible to the east. In Baotou, production managers at one of China's largest rare earth plants noticed something unusual. The order sheets from Germany and France stopped updating. Export volumes dropped by half in 2 weeks. No explanation. The magnets were still being produced. The workers still showing up. The trucks still scheduled. But the phones had gone quiet. In Guangzhou, a titanium processor filed for short-term financing. It was denied. Bank officers marked the business as exposed to geopolitical risk. Nothing more was said, because what changed wasn't supply. It was permission. The United States didn't block China's minerals. They simply rewrote the terms of participation. They called it Clean Minerals Protocol. Every shipment must now show where it came from, where it was processed, who touched it, and if any part of it went through Chinese hands, the entire shipment could be rejected. No one shouted, no one protested, but across 3 continents, contracts were rewritten. From now on, only verified minerals would count. China, once the world's factory of raw power, found itself in the position of being too connected to be trusted. The Ukraine deal wasn't just about resources. It was a firewall, a shield, polite way to say, not you. Inside Chinese state media, the story was never reported. Instead, a segment aired on record-high domestic processing output. The numbers looked strong, but no destination was listed. The products had nowhere to go. And still, no one inside the system said the word exclusion. They called it a pause, correction, a shift in market rhythm. But it wasn't a shift. It was a rerouting, and the route no longer passed through Beijing. In conference rooms across Europe, executives signed long-term contracts with Kiev and Ottawa. In Tokyo, a new facility began construction using or from Namibia. In Washington, grants were issued for strategic mineral security. But in Baotou, the floor manager wrote 2 words in his monthly report: no buyers. The system was still moving, just not in the direction China expected. And no one seemed to be turning back. The gate didn't slam shut. It just stopped opening. After the Ukraine agreement, nothing happened overnight. No new tariffs, no political crisis, no angry speeches, just a slow shift, subtle but permanent. The US called it a matter of supply security. Europe called it diversification. Japan called it resilience. But inside Chinese offices, it felt like something else. An engineer at a rare earth lab in Jiangxi opened a familiar email thread. It was a routine contract extension with a French client. renewed every April for 7 years. This time, there was no reply. 2 weeks later, he tried again. The server bounced the message back. Invalid recipient. He checked the address. It hadn't changed, but the relationship had, because the world hadn't stopped needing rare earths. It had stopped needing China's. The change was legal, not political. A single clause inserted into Western procurement policies now required all minerals to meet clean origin standards. It sounded harmless, but it required something China could no longer offer: transparency. Not the kind shown on brochures, the kind that survives third-party audits, blockchain tracking, independent certification, and most of all, trust. China had the volume, but not the access. Companies tried to adjust. They rerouted shipments through Vietnam, rebranded labels, changed harmonized system codes, but the system kept evolving. By March, ports in Hamburg and Rotterdam installed new scanning protocols. Anything with unclear origin was held. Some shipments sat in customs for 40 days, then sent back. No fines, no accusations, just rejection. In Washington, officials reviewed supply chain applications for electric vehicle subsidies. Dozens were denied. Reason: material origin unverifiable. In Tokyo, a senior procurement officer explained the change in one sentence: "We cannot afford uncertainty." In response, Chinese firms began to lower prices, offer faster shipping, extend credit, but no one was buying the price. They were buying the permission, and China had already lost it. At the Ministry of Commerce in Beijing, a memo circulated to key exporters. It instructed them to seek alternative markets and accelerate domestic consumption. But that wasn't strategy. It was a cover story. The truth was, no one wanted to say out loud what had happened. That China had not been beaten. It had been bypassed. And bypass is worse than defeat, because it doesn't make noise. It just leaves you standing still while everything else moves on. In early May, Ukraine's energy minister visited Brussels. They announced a joint facility for refining battery-grade lithium, funded by the EU, staffed by Western-trained engineers, built on deposits once studied by Chinese geologists. The project's official name: Independence Phase 1. No mention of China. None needed. Across 5 continents, that silence echoed louder than any speech. In Inner Mongolia, the refining plants still run. Smokestacks still rise. Trucks still roll down empty highways. But the orders are no longer real. The buyers are ghosts. And the future is being written elsewhere. In new languages. By new partners. Without Beijing. The factory floor still smells like burnt alloy and coolant. Fans hum above workstations. Digital panels blink with production numbers. Forklifts move crates between stainless steel racks. Everything looks normal, until you ask, where is it all going? In the southern district of Ganzhou, JLMAG Rare Earth still produces high-performance magnets used in electric motors. Last year, 80% of its shipments went to Europe. This year, those containers sit in storage. The invoices are printed, but there's no buyer code. Inside the export department, someone still updates the dashboard. Daily output, inventory volume, projected shipping dates. The charts climb, but no trucks leave the gate. At China Minmetals, a similar silence is growing. The logistics team has not received a confirmed shipping manifest from the US since February. The French distributor terminated its supply contract without warning. The German buyer stopped replying. No complaints, no negotiation, just disconnection. It happened quietly. First, buyers asked for new certifications. Then they requested third-party audits. Then they paused orders, pending policy review. And then they stopped asking altogether. In Baotou, a regional coordinator for Northern Rare Earth sits at her desk past midnight. She still calls old clients, sometimes just to see if the number works. It does. But no one picks up. Internally, the company reports strong fundamentals. Externally, its share value has dropped 35% in 4 months. The decline didn't come from scandal. It came from irrelevance. Across the industry, executives still attend trade expos in Nanning and Shenzhen. Booths are polished. catalogs printed, videos playing on loop. But the Western faces are missing. No US buyers, no EU procurement teams, no Japanese delegations, just local salespeople pitching products to one another. A room full of sellers, no one buying. In Q1 2025, rare earth export revenue fell by 41% across China's top 5 producers. Magnet manufacturers slashed overseas forecasts. Titanium processors closed 2 facilities in Jiangsu. And still, the press releases speak of temporary adjustments. But inside the factories, the numbers no longer lie. One plant in Sichuan reports 88 days of unsold inventory. Another in Hunan is operating at 22% capacity. Even firms with long-term state contracts are now cutting hours. A mid-level manager in Jiangxi puts it simply, "We're still making things, because if we stop, someone might ask why." The fear isn't failure, it's exposure. That someone somewhere might admit what everyone already knows. The market that sustained this empire has walked away, and yet the machines still run. The reports still get filed. The graphs still rise. Because in a system built on appearances, momentum matters more than direction. So they keep producing, not because there is demand, but because stopping would mean acknowledging the silence. And silence, in China's industrial core, is more dangerous than collapse, because at least collapse is visible. Every morning, he arrives at the same spot, 7:15 a.m., just outside Gate 4. Same uniform, same thermos of lukewarm tea. He checks the bulletin board. Still blank. 3 months ago, Chun Liang was a senior machinist at a rare earth separation plant in Baotou. 17 years on the job. He knew every valve, every sensor, every thermal sequence by heart. Now he waits, not for work, but for a decision. HR hasn't fired him, but they haven't paid him either. They say, temporary hold. So he shows up, because disappearing means surrender. He's not alone. Near the logistics gate, a cluster of former technicians pass the time in silence. Some play cards. Some scroll through job apps on outdated phones. None of them are applying. There's nothing to apply for. They're not officially laid off. But their entry badges don't work. Their names are no longer on the shift rosters. The factory hasn't shut down. It's just quietly set them aside. In Jiangxi, a metallurgy engineer was recently told to work from home. She laughed. Her job involves physical sampling of titanium rods. First, she waited for reassignment. Then she received a courier package. 1 laptop, 1 USB drive, and a note, self-training module. She hasn't logged in once. What would be the point? She has 2 degrees, 11 years of experience, and 0 prospects. It's not just the skilled workers. The auxiliary workforce is shrinking too. Forklift drivers, quality checkers, acid bath specialists, people trained for one purpose, feeding the export engine. Now that engine is idling. In Changsha, a retraining center has opened under the slogan, "From Factory to Future." The programs last 3 weeks. Topics include AI basics, live-stream sales, and digital logistics. Completion rate, under 30%. Job placement, less than 12%. Most never finish. They know what the instructors won't say. The world doesn't want what they know, and it doesn't need what they can learn. One man said it best during a state survey interview. "You taught me to refine metals. Now you want me to sell fruit online." Behind the industrial collapse is a social fracture. Salaries are unpaid, but complaints are invisible. Social media posts vanish within hours. WeChat groups go silent. Even protests are wordless. Just workers standing in front of locked gates, arms folded, mouths closed. In April alone, over 600 disturbance events linked to resource sector layoffs were recorded by private security firms in Sichuan, Inner Mongolia, and Guangdong. None were covered by the press, not even local. Inside official broadcasts, the economy is rebalancing. The transition is underway. Workers are upskilling. But in reality, the system is discarding them without closure, without explanation. One by one, the hands that built the global supply chain are being cut off from the very thing they sustained. Not because they failed, but because the world quietly chose a different route. The new supply lines don't pass through Baotou. The new standards don't recognize their certifications. The new contracts don't ask for their labor. And the worst part isn't unemployment. It's invisibility. These workers weren't just providers. They were proud, essential, needed. Now they are quiet, still showing up, still holding out. But the doors remain shut, not by force, just by forgetfulness. And that kind of closure is the hardest to survive. There was no headline, no summit, no global declaration, just a map slowly redrawn. In Brussels, a new contract was signed with Kyiv. 20 years of mineral access, titanium, lithium, rare earths. No tariffs, no restrictions, no China. In Ottawa, permits were fast-tracked for a magnet factory, funded by US and Japanese capital, using raw material from Ukraine and Australia. The memorandum referenced strategic clarity. The clause banning Chinese involvement was written in footnotes. In Tokyo, a G7 working group unveiled its Clean Chain Index. It scored suppliers not just by price, but by trust. China ranked Tier 4, below India, below Brazil. There was no outrage, just silence. And that silence spread faster than any sanction ever could. At the port of Hamburg, customs officers now scan containers for origin chains. If a shipment passes through China, even indirectly, it is flagged, delayed, audited, sometimes denied. The law doesn't say ban. It says verify. And in a system built on time, delay is enough to kill the deal. In Paris, a defense subcontractor switched suppliers. Too many Chinese elements, they said. Too many questions. Not enough answers. In Seoul, EV manufacturers now source their rare earths from Western Australia. The distance is longer. The price is higher. But the path is clearer. Across boardrooms in Munich, Chicago, Osaka, the new rule is simple. No surprises. No politics. No China. It's not about blame. It's about friction. And China, once seen as essential, is now treated as excessive. Inside Beijing's ministries, the reports are compiled. They show the drop in orders, the shifting contracts, the stalled partnerships. But the language remains polite. Temporary divergence, realignment of logistics, adjustments in procurement pathways. No one says what it really is. Disengagement. China is still producing, still refining, still storing. But the world has moved on. New alliances have been formed. The Mineral Security Partnership now spans 75 countries. Its standards are written in Washington, reviewed in Brussels, and enforced in Tokyo. Beijing is not at the table, nor in the footnotes, because the most effective kind of exclusion is the kind that doesn't require your name. Even Russia, under sanctions, still gets mentioned. China is being omitted, not punished, just no longer necessary. Back in Inner Mongolia, a new logistics hub sits half-built. It was designed for Europe-bound exports. Now it feeds domestic warehouses. In Shenzhen, a raw materials expo opens with full ceremony. But foreign buyers are absent. The booths shine, the products gleam, but the business cards exchanged are all in Mandarin. The future is still discussed, just not connected. And for the first time, the world's fastest-growing industrial power is no longer shaping the conversation. It is watching from the outside, without being told to leave, without being asked to return, just left out. One buyer, one contract, one protocol at a time, until the only question left is when China will realize it's already not part of the next system. At the edge of Baotou's industrial park, a security camera blinks in the dark. There's no movement to capture, no truck to log, no shipment to scan. The warehouse lights are still on, but no one's loading, no one's waiting. Thousands of miles away, a new factory opens in Lviv. Western investors cut a ribbon. Journalists take photos. A plaque reads, "Strategic autonomy begins here." Inside China, the machines still run. The reports still print. The language remains optimistic, but the orders are gone. The relevance, unspoken. There was no treaty, no confrontation, just a system rewritten without you. So the question isn't whether China still has the resources. It does. The question is, when the world stops calling your name, how do you know it's already over?